Hello, hello, hello. Hello, all you fabulous people in internet land, and welcome to the 10th week of the SPASA business webinars. And today is the importance of timing. I'm going to hand over to your host, the lovely Mr. David Stennett.
Thank you, the lovely Mr. Lindsay McGrath. I think nice vest, by the way, very sharp, look great, very cool. Hello, everybody. Welcome along to this week. So glad to have you here. So thank you for being here, participating. Don't forget to register for next week. We haven't even got through this week yet, but I'm already excited about next week too. Luke Daly will be back, and he's going to be talking on leading and managing effective workplace relationships, which will be terrific. Now, following this webinar, you are going to receive an email to undertake a short survey about this webinar. So please do fill it out. Your feedback really allows us to continually improve, and like you want to do with your professional role and business is continually improve, so do we, and you really do help us with that feedback. So that would be terrific. Terrific. Also, you will receive a certificate of attendance for today as well. And members of SPASA, hello, welcome, will also receive CPD points, which can go towards your certification and business accreditation as well, which is terrific. So Today, we are doing looking at a unit from a unit of competency, which is, there it is, the BSM BKG 507. Write that one down. There'll be a test at the end, ladies and gentlemen, on interpret market trends and developments. We're going to hear from the guy at the top of your screen. Well, he's on the top of my screen. I don't know where he sits for you, but he's sitting above me right now on my screen, from Lindsay McGrath, our CEO of SPASA, in a little while, talking about that. And I can't think of anyone better to share on this subject. Now, before we get to that, I would love to introduce you to and have a question and answer time from Terry Green. So please join me in welcoming. I can hear you all clapping out there silently right now. Terry Green, who's a General Manager of Sales at PayRight. PayRight is a buy now, pay later provider. It specialises in transactions around $1,000, and it's also our newest SPASA partner, which is so exciting. Buy now, pay later. It's a trend that's experiencing huge growth, unprecedented growth over the last few years, and it appears so even more in COVID-19 world. So talking with us today, as you can see on your screen, is Terry Green, GM of Sales at PayRight. Terry's here going to talk with us and share with us about how this trend's changing, and particularly the growing demand for the buy now, pay later in the home sector. So hello, Terry. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Nice to meet all you smiling, cheering faces out there in cyber world.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. So look, Terry, let's get straight into it. How and why has buy now, pay later grown in popularity with customers, and I guess particularly in the last few months as well?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, that's a big question, and I won't go into a big answer. Really, our stats show us that 56% of customers prefer buy now, pay later now over credit cards. And I've certainly seen that in my history. I've been in financial services for sort of 13, 14 years now. And I don't think it's a really technical answer to that question. I think that we've lost collectively faith in our banks. You know, we've seen royal commissions, we've seen the things that go on there. We want a product where we can still spread the spend out over time, but we want it to be really transparent, really quick, really easy, not too invasive, not take up a lot of our really precious time. So customers have certainly led that march into buy now, pay later. And if we, you know, continue to do the right thing, then we're just really capitalising on a market that was already there, people that love to spread the spend. For me, from a COVID particular time that we're in now too, really interesting because I'm seeing lots of things that we saw during the GFC. Are you old enough to remember that?
I like you.
We just made it through that. So we're seeing the transition now of people really thinking about what they're spending their money on and what they're saving their money on. So like as a GM of sales, you know, I hear these people saying cash is no longer king, and it really upsets me. It really does, because cash is still king to our customers. They just might want to hold on to it for a little bit longer or keep it in their bank accounts for that rainy day. So in terms of them, you know, jumping on and keeping their money, then facilities like us can come in and help them still get the things that they really want and still spread it out over time.
So is there a typical buy now, pay later customer? And I suppose if so, the angle for that is, what does that mean for our SPASA, our industry members?
Yeah, look, you would have seen, you know, and I've seen the buy now, pay later space absolutely boom over the recent, I would say 5 years. And the typical customer for most of, we call them the other pays looks quite different to PayRight. So at the other pays, they're really focused on those millennial shoppers, which is great. You know, they certainly make up 1/3 of our workforce now, so they're really important shoppers. But for PayRight, we've always been really big on the consultative sales process, hence our transaction sizes typically being north of $1,000, sitting around that average of $5,000. And when people are spending that amount of money, they want to have a little bit more engagement with the person that they're spending it with, or the website that they're going to, or the lease line that they're crossing. So we're seeing more of the Gen X type customers. They're more mature, they're more stable, and happy days. I want to see some clapping. They spend more money.
Yeah, very good. So look, you've discussed the fact that it's a growing payment trend. What's the biggest benefit you see to merchants, and again, particularly for our industry?
Yeah, there's lots of benefits. I'll whittle them down to my three top ones, the three C's. The first one I think I've spoken about is convenience. It's got to be quick. It's got to be easy. It's got to be something that mum and dad can do while their kids are dragging them off, to get an ice cream on a Saturday morning and they're standing in your shop. So if you can give them a window of opportunity, 2 minutes, they can spend $10,000. Kids are happy with their ice cream in 2 minutes time. Mum and dad are really happy because they're going home to a beautiful spa. Then I think it's a win-win for everybody. So convenience. The second C for me would be cash flow. I think it's a word that, I can hear you guys cheering for again. We do pay you up front as soon as the goods have been dispatched. So it's a really easy transaction. There's no chasing of invoices or any of those things that you may have used to have to do. And the last one for me is conversions. So it's about converting more of your marketing dollars into leads. It's about taking those leads and converting more of those into actual sales. And it's doing so at a higher average transaction cost, because we know that when people can spread the spend over time and paying repayments, they're more likely to spend more.
Yeah, and I think you're speaking to a lot of different levels there. I had a role for a little while in sales, selling an item of over sort of the $10,000 mark in solar panels, solar systems. And to have a system like this would have helped me very much with my conversions. I have no doubt whatsoever. Yet cash flow for our businesses in being paid straight away is also very important. So I think you identify some really important benefits to different people within different businesses across our industry, which I really take value in. So we're seeing this trend of buy now, pay later. We're seeing the convenience of it, the benefit to cash flow, we're getting paid straight away, and an increase in conversions, which is so important. How do you think this trend might change over the next few years? What are you seeing?
Look, we're seeing hockey stick growth in really small transactions. I call them the micro transactions. So anything sort of south of $800. What COVID has shown us in particular is that people do really want to use these facilities and spend more money. So I think we'll see maybe not quite hockey stick, but we will still see incremental growth in the buy now, pay later industry, but we'll see it on different styles of products. So we'll see the acceptance move from just millennials into baby boomers, into Gen Xers. And so we'll see more of the market ditching their credit cards and moving on to buy now, pay later.
Very, very good. Look, is there anything else that you'd sort of want to talk to or add before we finish up this part of our segment, Terry?
No, look, I just want to thank you, and for those that are listening to me, to giving me this opportunity to talk about buy now, pay later. I'm obviously here representing PayRight, but I would encourage everybody to look at the facility that they have and use it to their best advantage. And if you're sitting there saying, oh, I've tried this and it didn't really work for me, that's when I would say perhaps you've got the wrong partner, because we've seen growth of 30 to 40 to 50. I've seen up to, some stores in your market that 60% of their sales are done on a facility like this. So you may not want to, take all of those customers into your store today, but I'm sure that now is a good time to work out, have you got the right partner for you?
Terry, look, obviously simple and smart solution here on a whole lot of levels that you've talked us through really clearly and articulately this afternoon. What I actually don't have here, and Lindsay, I might include you if I need to here, what's the best way for our members to get in touch with PayRight? Via SPASA? They can reach out direct to Terry, I assume?
Absolutely. I'm going to just pop into the chat panel now my phone number and email address. So feel free to get in touch with me. Now, if I'm not, in your state or local, I may put somebody else in touch with you, because I'm expecting hundreds. But no, we're really happy to talk to you. And it doesn't necessarily need to be about PayRight and becoming a partner of ours. I'd love to encourage conversations about, I've got an existing partner and it's not working for me. What do you suggest in terms of marketing and other things that can support your business?
Very good. Well, Terry, we really appreciate your time and expertise on this area this afternoon. There's definitely opportunity for our industry and for plenty of people, I'm sure, that are listening right now. Thank you so much for your time, and please do reach out and have a chat with Terry regarding how PayRight might be able to help you. We do appreciate your support.
Thanks, guys. Great to talk to you.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Terry.
All right. It is absolutely my pleasure right now to be able to hand over to CEO of SPASA Australia to talk about interpret market trends and developments, the importance of timing, I will hand over to Lindsay McGrath. Thanks, Lindsay.
Thanks, Dave. Right. Hello, everyone. Great to have Payright, who've been a fantastic partner in the last couple of months when they've come on board and assisted us in the education space, is where we went looking for Payright. It was wonderful with the expansion of our certificate for in pool building and some of the other qualifications we're doing, just like what this one's about, which is the business qualifications to allow people a different way to pay without interest. So obviously a great relationship with Payright, and that has then come through, and they've decided to support us as SPASA, as a partner across our entire organisation. So awesome. Okay, the importance of timing. Understanding timing and trends, it makes a difference to your market share. You know, it's quite simple and yet very complex. Your relevance to the customer is often about how fast you can keep up with trends, or if you can create your own. They can be simple and have a lot of benefit in the really micro size, such as summer heat waves. You know, we all know as an industry, at least from a retail and service point of view, and this affects building a little bit later in a few months, but a trend, for want of a better term, or at least a spike, can happen something as simple as 3 hot weekends in a row and a thunderstorm on a Tuesday and everything goes green, and suddenly you've got a spike of people. But when does a spike of weather become a consistent habit or trend? Because everybody wants to swim when it's hot. How do we help that trend? And a trend generally expands a spike, just like a heater expands the weather we can swim in. So with trends and timing, it's about identifying the actual trend. So launching on when you follow, picking the time to enter a trend, picking the time to start a trend, is about identification. Now, trends by their very nature are progressive, expansive, and also retractive, depending on your point of view. More demand for sustainable power equals increase in solar panels, but it means more panels, less fuel-driven cars. Therefore, more automation and driverless cars will mean less cars, but that also means less parking lots, less taxes, and therefore less infrastructure. So trends can often go both ways. They're always 20/20 in hindsight. Now, since COVID, we haven't had a lot of 20/20 jokes come through, but trends are always, when you look back on them and you look after the result and you go, of course, I should have seen that coming. They always make sense later. And it's often not easy to get them at the beginning or jump on them fast enough. Personally, I didn't see the mullet hairstyle returning. I'm not going to jump onto that particular trend, but it's an example of, okay, where things come from, and there's definitely a negative to the mullet. Often there's a gut feel in marketing. You all know this. You're all in business in some way, shape, or form to be on this webinar, and you've got a gut feel. You've got that intuition. Intuition is, I suppose, where the conscious and subconscious meet. Neuroscience tells us that the gut feel or intuitions occur when there's a significant match or mismatch between your cognitive past experiences and the current one that hasn't yet met your conscious awareness, hence the gut feel. Trends are generally metaphorical. In other words, you can always look at a trend after the fact and go, it was like this, or it was like that, or it's kind of like, you know, climate change equals sustainable products. But before we get from timing and trends, we've got to make some core assumptions, especially for this, because this is an entire unit of competency in a diploma level course. So to try and simplify it down today to a 40-minute or half an hour webinar, let's make some core assumptions around goals. You're all business people. So for this presentation, you've got some goals. It's not a presentation around the 4 Ps of marketing. You know, this assumes that you know your target market. You've segmented that market. With the market you're in, you've got a range of products or services, and you know the equilibrium or where the price point sits for those products and services. So for you to have a promotion, or you have promotions that currently go into your existing market, you know where to penetrate currently into new markets, and you've got some idea around product development. Alternatively, well, it's around diversification, but alternatively, if you don't have that, then realistically as a business person, you're doing the equivalent of just sitting and waiting to die. Because if we don't have those goals for growth or expansion, then we're relying on status quo. And we all know that status quo in business, there is no such thing as a parallel line in business. You're either going up or going down, because overheads and costs remain consistently going up. So we have to grow. So for today's webinar, let's just park the goals there aside and rely on the fact of, yes, we have them. We won't go into those too much. For that though, on the bottom of the screen, you've got a chat box. So please click the chat box now. And this is where we want some of your interaction. And please, it makes these webinars so much better when you can see everyone's views. You can choose panelists and all attendees. So please choose on the chat box, step one, that you're choosing panelist and all attendees. And that way, what you're sharing goes to everybody. So here's the workshop question. Please write in the chat box a major product category or service that you're offering in your business. So something really broad. So for example, field repair service people, renovations as a component of construction, entire ranges of chlorine or chemical range, something like solar heating. So think something big. So if you could, all of you on there, yep, aluminium fabrication, pool covers, awesome. So if you're stuck and you don't want to share what's in your business, think of what 20% of your competitors' business is made up of. So there's plenty of you on, yep, keep them coming through. Pool chems, yep, excellent. Replacement liners, keep them coming. So what we're looking for is big, broad buckets. And if you want to get more specific, that's fine. Landscape design's a cracker one, thanks Naomi. So as they're coming through, we've got these core ranges that mean enough of our business that immediately off the top of your head, when someone says, what's a decent chunk of your business? And you guys have come up with what that is. So just have that in the back of your mind, because we're going to talk about that throughout the presentation, and it's going to come to the fore at the end. Now, if this product is at least 10% of your business, and definitely some of those items on those businesses that have come through, that's up to 30% plus. So if these products are a reasonable part of your business, and remember 5% of your time, or one day a month is 5% of your time, and some of those product ranges are much, much larger than that. The question is, if goals are so important, do you have a goal for those product ranges? So just take a second to think about this. You've just written, and if you didn't write, you've thought about what a large product range or a particular range you're selling to your client looks like. And what's the goal? Now, the immediate thought is going to be sell more than prior year. When pushed, what's the goal for your largest range? Sell more. But the obvious question then is, what data do you need to capitalize on the resources you have to get the best return? And that's really where trends come in, is we've all got the standard day in, day out. But if everything happened day in, day out, on Monday, you would just ship products directly to your client and they would accept them. Trends and market pressures, what makes the difference. There's an old proverb of all good things come to those who wait. It's actually from a poem by Lady Mary Montgomery Curry in the 12th century. Being patient doesn't necessarily apply when it comes to the analysis of trends. You can be patient and watching a spike, but when it comes to a trend, starting a trend can be as simple as starting a new habit for you, your family, or your staff, or it can be life-changing. So some of the trends of 2019, have a think about some of the trends in 2019. This is the important one, I think. Bike shorts and blazers. Now, I've threatened the SPASA staff team that this is the new summer uniform, because this was a trend in 2019. Now, I don't particularly follow this circle, but when I typed in trends when I was researching for this particular item, I wasn't really thinking about this as a trend, and I'm pretty sure you weren't either. But trends are, by their very nature, expansive and retractive. Fidget spinners. The 2019 fidget spinner. So when I asked the question of what did you see coming or what the trends were in 2019 that were life-changing, you didn't think of fidget spinners. Yet, The Economist reported this last year that more than somewhere between 19 and 50 million fidget spinners were sold in the year of 2019. So that's a significant trend. Now, although a lot of things have happened recently, think of how many 10-year-olds you saw without flicking it. And many of you went, what is the point of a fidget spinner? But 15 or up to 50 million of these things were sold in a very short period of time. But another trend that brought all of our families together in a worldwide gogglebox type experiment was, of course, COVID, where the world ran out of toilet paper and sanitizer and face masks and sanity in many cases. And it obviously is a new world for us all to think of. And it's pretty poignant to talk about trends and not the giant elephant in the room. It's definitely making a difference in society today, but how is that going to affect our businesses? And how is that going to help you look at what your business looks like for the remainder of 2020 and for the future years? So, Loom Bands. Thanks, Sarah. I have two daughters, and Loom Bands were something that killed several vacuum cleaners. Thank you. Please everybody, feel free to chat throughout it. This is very interactive. Market analysis. When we look at trends, you've got to have analysis. You've got to crunch some data. You've got to get a little bit dirty and understand what you're looking at, and not just take it only on gut feel. Our webinar's focus today is really around the initial stage of market analysis. We don't have time to go into a diploma level course in half an hour or so. On the discovery component, or the first aspect of market analysis, and the second one, opportunity, is where we're going to focus today. The technical aspects around market analysis, around STP analysis or segmentation, targeting and positioning, we leave for the business qualification. So today our focus is around discovery and opportunity. Around discovery, you can break up discovery really in three parts. And you'll often, with our webinars, you'll see that SPASA operates a business model, and we teach things often in the rules of three, where it's easy to break things up a little bit easier in three, and it's easy to explain to staff or work through programs in the rule of three. So under discovery, we look at it around conduct, calculate, and corroborate for the three aspects of discovery when it comes to market analysis. When it comes to conduct, it's observation, research, surveying, interviews, and focus groups. So it's really what you're looking at, what you can see, what you can read, what you can collect. So what physically are you doing? So think of it as the physical aspect of just do it, okay? The old Nike symbol. What are you going to do to go out, not make an assumption around your large project or your large service, and go and conduct something? Now, whether that's physical research or whether that's Googling what the item is, or whether that's dragging a sales rep in, but you've got to do some sort of conduct to collect data. With conduct, we can easily group, they say, those five into just really two key things: external and internal. So the external is really the physical. So market competitors, suppliers, alternative industries. It's really around that community zeitgeist. Zeitgeist is a German term around defining the spirit or the mood in a particular time in history, or a particular group, or around a particular belief. So often the zeitgeist at the moment, obviously around COVID, around community, around Black Lives Matter, before that, the Me Too movement, there's some really large zeitgeists in our current culture that's shaping our future. And it flows on throughout, all the way down to how we sell product. But we need to contextualize this to our industry. So we've looked at some simple tools around this. Really quick tools, just of what SPASA can offer our current members, or what we thought of when we looked at contextualizing this communication, or this qualification subject to you, our webinar followers, is around how do we quickly explain what a zeitgeist is and what you could see. Up on the screen at the moment, you've got the floor plan for one of our Pool and Spa Expos, and these are held in every region around Australia and New Zealand every year, and they're targeting consumers. But what I wanted to highlight to all of you is if you're trying to use time well, there's not much better to see approximately 100+ stands every year selling directly to the consumer. It's a really fast way to see the collective viewpoint of how an industry is selling into the consumer. Times this by other events, royal shows, etc. You get that zeitgeist of what is being purchased and what the feel is of the consumer. Now contextualize that to your own big product and go, right, how would I walk into one of these shows and look at it from my point of view of what I want to sell more of? Beyond the consumer, you've got B2B. And again, the easy one is something like Splash, a biennial show, largest in the Southern Hemisphere, lots of product launches, lots of networking. But again, it's everyone selling to a particular group. And so Zeitgeist is a really good word to look at it. It gets a really good feel for a total culture of an industry around these trade shows. So if you're not utilizing these tools or putting them in your calendar, so that's once a year for consumer and every 2 years for trade shows, it can really give you some immense amount of information beyond just going and making a sale or doing some networking. But you need regular input as well. So from a regular input, look at industry magazines. Such as obviously Pool and Spa and Splash and Choosing Your Pool and Spa magazines. These show trends, whether it be building pools and what the trends are per dollar value from a Choose Your Pool and Spa, or what the latest best practice items are aimed at the consumer who owns a pool, which is the Pool and Spa Enhancing Outdoor Life. And Splash, the magazine, is obviously 6 issues between the years to support the trade show. But they're incredible sources of information. Look past just the articles and look for the trends. What is coming up? Look at the back of these magazines around new products. Bit of a workshop question for the chat box. So how else do you get a feel for the zeitgeist? So what other external sources do you use to seek out information, to get that external and internal information? So you've got you've conducted and you've got information for you. So if you could, yep, Facebook, excellent. So that's definitely the feel for the consumer, because they can give you almost instant information, and they're always after instant gratification. Lots and lots of Facebook. Weather is an industry that is absolutely prone for the weather. Example again before, the perfect weather for us is hot weekends and 2 inches of rain on a Tuesday. Instagram, Pinterest, so lots of social media. So if we progress a little further onto the second aspect of conduct, which is the internal, so that's all external forces. Internal data is around your own surveys, your own staff input, your own consumer input. This data is readily available, but we often get caught up in busy work or making a buck or opening and closing the store or getting the job done. When do we have time to do a survey? So you finish the pool build while the customer is loving you and happy. Obviously, the first thing we try and do is make sure we get a good review to make sure that we're at the higher rank of Google, and you can apply this to any form of your own business. But when do we actually go back and do like an exit interview with an ex-employee or an exit interview with someone that wasn't happy once they've come down, to get the true data about what was good and what was bad about your own organization? Because we all get caught up with our own blinkers on around what we're emotionally caught up with in our own organization. Do you actually ask your staff? Your diversification policy around your own organization, you'll have Gen X, Gen Y, baby boomers, all sorts of staff with different aspects. Don't dismiss any of their viewpoints, because it'll all be different. So have you spent the time in actually asking them what they think about it? So, and then ask someone who's not emotionally biased, someone who is not connected to the profit of your organization or being paid by you, and ask them the question. So now we move on to that second aspect of discovery, which is calculate. Now, from all the analyticals on the call, analysis paralysis is a wonderful thing. Data, 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 until you don't actually have to make a decision. You can just keep looking at data. Spreadsheets, infinitum. For the creatives out there and the drivers who just want to get it done, there's nothing worse than looking at data. And there has to be somewhere in between. You've got to collect some data to help you get over that emotive bias that we just discussed around conduct. Because often you'll go and collect information to prove your own bias. Data can often challenge that. Data is always quantitative. It is numbers, it's statistics, it's volume. It's often numbers because alternatively we'll get to qualitative, which is more around the words. Around this quantitative, we've got external groups that do play in our field. So you've got the Cordell report that comes out monthly around new pool builds by CoreLogic. You've got the Roy Morgan Research Facility and IBIS who compete, and they'll bring out something every year on the size of the industry. And you've got the Australian Bureau of Statistics and other reports that SPASA and Splash produce. The industry in general doesn't have a lot of data that's openly shared or even privately shared by the retail and service division or the construction division. So there's not a lot of qualitative or quantitative data for our industry that you can hang your hat on. The Cordell report, for example, is often viewed as about 60% accurate. Now, there's opportunities for our organisation, especially with SPASA, to provide a better result for that over time. But at this stage, it's a good look at trends, but you've got to be careful with this sort of data to view it as biblical. You know, it's not necessarily 100% accurate. A bit of a qualification challenge to all of you. In our qualification, so if you decide to do a business qualification or a Cert 4, when you come to qualitative, there's an awful lot of math. Whether it's a mean or weighted or median averages, geometric means, the empirical rule, which is at the bottom. Lots of those things are used in true marketing and looking at qualitative data to try and make sure that you've got the right information. In small business, my recommendation would do, when you look at this sort of mathematics, I'd go and do what I do and find a 15-year-old who's doing advanced maths at high school, because they're the only ones I know who can explain this to me, because I've never used it since going to high school. So for today, this is a bit of fun to go, yep, all this stuff sits behind it from a qualification point of view, but for what we use day in, day out, it's really looking at that third aspect of discovery, which is around that qualitative component, the measuring and monitoring. So we've done something, we've physically gone out and conducted, we've collected, we've calculated some data, but now it's around that subjectiveness, bringing a bit more of the gut feel in and your own experiences by taking the data, making it subjective, intuitive, and more words than numbers around the why and the questions around that. And this is where your own staff, your sales team, your sales reps from opposition, etc., or from your suppliers, are really important. And it's a lot more valuable to do it in that order of go and conduct, calculate, and then corroborate around this qualitative data. Because if you don't do this, you're really just looking at an ink blot and you're just making stuff up. If you only start with corroborate your own biases, you've got to be able to start in that direction. On corroboration, your own organisation, you're going to have a CRM of some form where you capture the information around your clients. When was the last time you pulled a report out and actually compared year on year? I was always surprised in a previous role around retail where the expectation was that 75% of new business stayed with them. And if you had a look at those people who are coming into the store, if you're in retail or with supply and they're purchasing for the first year, what is the trend year 2? What is the trend year 3 of those purchasing patterns? Do they come back? Do they continue to buy? Or are you just looking at the end result? Your own finance pack, obviously, of tracking down cash flow on your balance sheet and income statement is very important. But now think about that core product or service that you thought about at the beginning of this. Where does that fit into these tools? You finish off the books for the quarter, or you're having a look at the CRM, or you're doing around the toolbox meeting on a Monday morning or on site from a HR point of view or an IR point of view, or you know what your sales history is looking like and everything's looking rosy. But now insert that key product range into what you're currently doing. Where's that? Is that being measured in your own collaboration of your own data, even before you go outside? So progressing on time. I'd like to contextualize all of that process now and look at some case studies. Let's have a look at this. So on your screen at the moment, you've got a commodity becoming a specialty. Now, and excuse for the brands, but you get the intent of a commodity. There's not much more commodity than salt in our industry. It's sold by the pallet, and it's in large volumes. There was a period of time not that long ago that the price was driven down to around the $4 mark through through the big box stores when they were fighting. And then someone launched a $29.95 product up against it. Now, in hindsight, it's all made sense because the consumer's looking for a better quality feel, the price is found an equilibrium. So when we look at it, we can find justification of why we did or didn't do. But look at it as a great example of how innovative our industry is and what people are willing to do. It's not just having a conversation around what Apple did. Our industry is full of opportunities and full of examples that fit this market analysis and how to challenge a trend or create one. And I think the magna pool, the minerals in general, where so many pools now are automatically on a mineral system of some form, because someone not only challenged a commodity, but significantly challenged the marketplace. The second case study I'd like to talk through is a specialty upgrade. So think of your product as a specialty. The industry, again, in a similar time frame over a couple of years, went from being very, very dominated by suction cleaners and expanding into robots. Now, again, let's look at the price point from something that was anywhere from $200 to $600 and now is more averaging around that $1,500, $2,000, etc. And so a real challenge previously around a commodity, but now it's around a specialty, around a cleaning product, around a particular item that you do. And now we've got a big challenge, but I think you will agree, it's actually expanded the entire size of the market. It hasn't just replaced, it's expanded. And it's a great opportunity and example of our industry doing it. The third case study I'd like to use as an example around what analysis can do and trends is the single speed pump to variable speed pumps. The industry moved from single speed to variable partly because of pressure on the East Coast at a particular time and a rebate system. But it was at the right time when there was pressure from government. So it's not just about the pump, it's about, or the product. And look at your own example that you put in the chat box earlier. This is about external pressures and being internally ready for the opportunity. The external pressures were from the networks. The external pressure when it came to pumps were from the energy networks, the Origins, the AOLs of the world, etc. They have real concerns and continue to this day around demand. And therefore there's multiple standards being rewritten as we speak around demand response and how Australia and New Zealand are going to deal with the energy drought that's coming. Demand in peak times is such an impact that they are willing to invest and do a rebate on a variable speed pump to test the marketplace. And since then, there's been government processes, the E3 program, and the current NATHAS group out of Canberra are working on various items that will make variable speed pumps and what they represent even more of a standard what they currently are now. But this also tied into consumer expectation. The consumers are expecting every industry to look at more sustainable options. Now, you could argue that, that the understanding of how to use a pump, how to sell it, where it fits, etc., but get your head out of the technical for a minute and look at this from a trend analysis point of view. There's a push from an external force of an authority and a pull from a consumer that's demanding sustainability because of an overall zeitgeist around that sustainability and energy need. Our industry is a great opportunity and is at the forefront around energy and water saving. And it's a great opportunity for our industry to look beyond just the pump, but along the pad. And so many of you are already doing this. The next case study I'd like to look at is automation. This one's super broad and there's just a couple of examples there, but we've always been further advanced than the rest of the world around automation, at least within this industry. Salt pools or salt chlorinators have been, basically the marketplace for 3 decades. and it's only now making and getting to that sort of 25-30% of the US market. But that automation need now is exponentially going up because of IoT, because of the Internet of Things. And we're seeing it all the way to the point where it's less about the product range now, and there are models out there that just focus on the energy, where they'll convert an entire pool just to get the energy bill, and all of the equipment becomes irrelevant. And so there's some significant trends in our industry around that pull from the consumer and push from government around energy, and automation is core to that. So, workshop. I know I've talked at you for some time, but there's a lot to cover in a short period of time. Please write in the chat box what you think is coming next. So I've given you some live examples of how trend analysis and how market analysis has been conducted in a way where all of those examples, a lot of work would have been done by the people who had launched it. So what do you think is next? Please put it in the chat box now. And what is the opportunity is another way of looking at it. Where do you see your business from the current trends and the current viewpoint or the current zeitgeist with the community around COVID? Obviously, I've heard all your ears because no one's typing, so let me help. Contactless is a key word at the moment across our regions of Australia and New Zealand. Holidays at home. Yep, the staycation mentality. Our industries love that model around cocooning and helping people love their home. I totally agree, Sarah, on our industry's never had a better opportunity. The consumers are still going to want instant gratification. We know that's a definite. Everyone's expecting communication to be instant these days. They want their reasoning now and they don't want to do work. So even though they're a bit more at home, it's beyond the product, and there's still that contactless. They want to spend more time with family and doing what they want to do rather than look at a product. So I see that's continuing with our industry. Now think beyond product. For an example, our education process or our education qualifications. Landscaping and the home construction qualifications now get almost equal number of pool builders coming in for their qualification and service, because we see a lot of construction or a lot of businesses who are wanting to expand their construction needs. Why go and get the contract for a $45,000 pool, for example, if you can get a $150,000 contract for the landscaping, the fencing and everything? And we're seeing that it's pretty common, or it's been common for a long time, of the service market expanding into commercial and then expanding further into certification and other forms, because you've already got the overheads, you've already got the resources to just swivel and actually take on the next component or that next addition to utilize your current skills and your current relationship with the consumer. What do you think the consumer would choose, cheaper or easier, based on the current zeitgeist of the community at large right now, coming out of COVID with the current issues we've got around politics, etc.? Choosing cheaper or easier, what do you think in the chat box? Depends. Most would choose easier. Yep, easier. Lots of easier coming through. I tend to agree. Cheaper is often what your sales team or your staff, or what you might go to in times of stress, is to try and do cheaper or address a current concern. I think with the examples I threw up on screen, it wasn't my intent, it's just coming to my head now, is everything up on that screen was a more expensive product, but it either gave the illusion of easier or it gave an alternative on easier based on the feelings it gave a consumer. So please revert back to your existing or your first group of products or services that we talked about earlier in the meeting. What would make that easier for your customer? Now, whether that's you're a sales rep selling, entire ranges of pads and pumps or whatever have you, or whether you're out in the field just trying to get more services done in the day, what's going to make the feeling easier for your customer? And is that a current trend you can capitalize on, or it look like you're following a current trend of caring for their needs? And could that give you that extra 20%? How would you deliver it? And that's what we're trying to get at today. We've given some structure of how to do it around the marketing side of things, of what market analysis is. But every business needs to do it. Up on your screen now, as SPASA is a non-for-profit entity that is for the purpose of a happier and healthier community, for helping people swim in more pools more often. Our role is to promote and grow an industry. You all know this. But what you may not know is in the last 2 annual reports, we've launched this particular item, our roadmap for success for the industry. We've put our money where our mouth is, where we've looked at the trends, and we believe there's an opportunity to grow the industry by 25% by 2025. Now, it's a significant push out there, and we believe there's a pull in the marketplace, and there's definitely a need for it. We believe there's enough consumers and enough market to grow our industry by 25%. So here's an opportunity for you to play a part in that. Plunge pools, for example, were a minor product only a few years ago. We now have factories creating concrete pools in a factory to put on a truck and ship anywhere in the country and deliver from go to woe in a 48-hour period. We've got spas that become pools. We've got pools that become spas. We've got an industry that's variable in whatever way, on whatever budget you want. We can put a piece of beautiful blue in your backyard. But housing isn't getting any bigger, or the houses are getting bigger, but the land's getting smaller. But that staycation mentality post-COVID is a great opportunity for pools and spas, and we're seeing that with the quotes still coming through our construction side of our industry. So beyond product and growth, looking at your own people, looking at the staff around you or the team that you can influence, are they still selling the same choices that met the user pre-COVID? Are they looking at past trends or not understanding trends and are just selling what's in front of them? Are they going through the motions? Are you going through the motions on that core product or service that we talked about at the beginning? How is your marketing going to change from today's webinar, looking at that conduct, calculate and corroborate that data to look at what another 10% or 5% or even 25% growth would look like over a period? Do you know who you're targeting? Are you putting the same advertisement in Facebook and boosting it to the same groups of people, or are you looking at a wider range? An example of looking at trends is the Climate Care Certified program that you can see on the screen there. SPASA used to had a program about water saving. With all the input from government and the challenges that were, we saw that a product was beyond our industry body, and we created the Climate Care model around looking at services, systems, and products, that not just around water, but energy, noise, etc. The world's changing around sustainability, and even a non-for-profit entity like SPASA needs to get behind it and push. Is your business following the same? This all comes down to timing. The last thing that we need to look at, obviously, which is the beginning or the title of this presentation, was around timing. Timing of when you start to participate in a trend, try and start a trend, really determines on impact and the benefit to your business. The analysis and thought process that starts with discovery, seeking the opportunity, so you go and conduct, calculate, and corroborate to allow that discovery to be rooted in data, your own experience, what the competition and external parties do, allow you to ask the question and to challenge past experiences and cognitive intuition. It comes back to your gut, but your gut has listened to the process. Now, last particular workshop, I'll think back to that key product and service that we talked about earlier in this webinar. Is there some discovery to be had and some analysis and time to think so you can sell more or deliver more? Thank you for listening. Thank you very much for the ability for us to present our 10th week. Don't forget to participate in next week's webinar, which is about leading your team when developing and managing a workplace relationship. After this webinar, you'll receive a short survey. Please fill in the survey. It's so important for us at week 10 to get your feedback and to improve us as speakers and how we're delivering information and whether it's relevant to you, our members, our listeners, our webcast followers. So please fill in that survey. Everyone will receive a certificate of attendance, and of course, SPASA members will receive CPD points. So thank you very much for listening. This was a webinar and a sneak peek of one of the qualifications in our Cert 4 for Small Business Management, which are all listed on our website. And this is the last 2 weeks of the 50% off all business qualifications, which is our end of financial year offer. And last but not least, I would like to thank Terry Green and Payright for their support. Today, it was wonderful to have, and all of our sponsors that I forgot to cover off at the beginning that you all saw, to have all of our sponsors throughout this set of webinars and our long-term sponsors that cover off everything else. So Dave and I will stay on the call for as long as it takes for any questions. Again, thank you very much for Terry and Sophie, support person there from Payright, and their support of our organisation. Please flick through any questions you've got. If not, have a wonderful afternoon or evening, depending on where you are in our region. Thank you for the nice words, Jim and Simon and John and Sherry and John. You're very welcome.